everybody, it's that time again, that exciting time when it is vinyl tag. As you know, I love vinyl tags, and last year I had the possibility to do 3 of them during the year. Today it is for once something that looks like a typical real Swedish winter day. It's winter with snow and the sun is shining, and it is a couple of degrees cold. So today it is for once a real winter, actually, nice winter day. But vinyl tag 2021 finally. So let's get started. Some of these questions I think I have answered before in other vinyl tags, but still, starting from the beginning. Discovery in 2020. This isn't a total discovery because of course I knew about the group before, but the band itself was in my opinion limited to 2 or 3 songs that I did like. And I'm talking about Pointer Sisters, whose 80s productions, as you know, I love the 80s, but Pointer Sisters 80s production, other than Dare Me, Neutron Dance, or Be There, other than those 3, the Pointer Sisters songs were pretty much boring, actually. Horrible produced and no fun at all. So I had written off Pointer Sisters as an interesting band, and overplayed everywhere the same songs, Jump and all those kind of stuff. But I took a chance of some Pointer Sisters during 2020 from the 70s that I had yet to discover. I was still scared, I guess, because if they were an all-party band back then also. But I was surprised when I got this one, Having a Party, from 1977, that they were actually a whole lot better in the 70s than they were in the 80s. Because this one was not a perfect album, but way better than any Pointer Sisters album that I ever heard. It was a really, really nice soul, disco, funk album, actually. And I also found this one, Energy, from 78, the follow-up. Also a really great album. So the discovery 2020 is the 70s Pointer Sisters that actually are a whole lot better than I could imagine. Quarantine buy. I haven't done any quarantine buy. Everything I have bought in store, with exception from some that I have ordered from the web shop Gensa, but I would have ordered them anyway, COVID or not. So a specific quarantine buy I haven't actually done. I normally don't buy on internet. An LP that you want to find in 2021. That is a lot. Do you want me to ramble my entire wish list? We'll stick to one. I bought a couple of years ago a couple of singles with a British disco soul band from the 80s called Cool Notes. As far as I know, they only released 1 album, and that 1 album I want to find by Cool Notes. I think it is from 1985-86, because I think that one will be so amazingly great, funky, and real smooth 80s pop disco soul that I do like very much, because those singles really surprised me of how amazing they were. A box set. I pulled out a CD box set because my vinyl boxes are all in jazz, and I recently showed them when I showed my jazz collection. I picked this one, which might be a surprise considering the label. But this is a box set with Brand New Heavies, the anthology of the Brand New Heavies. And it's a 2 CD box set, and released on maybe my least favorite label, as is said somewhere here, MCPS. That is I hate that label, as you know. I hate that label. But even a blind chicken find something to eat sometimes, a corn. And this is actually really great. It's not a typical greatest hits, so anthology is a total wrong word. But it is actually a great, funky, maybe a little remixed, but still very funky and great box set with a great 90s soul, funk, acid jazz band. So highly recommended actually. A concept album. Well, one of my absolute favorite concept albums is this, The Turn of a Friendly Card, Alan Parsons Project. And the concept here is gambling. When you're gambling way too much. And the problems that comes with that. And really awesome made. And smooth, real great produced from 1979. An album where an artist, a band changed directions. Well, when it comes to me who enjoys music from the decades when artists all of a sudden in the 90s changed directions constantly, it was hard to actually find the most suitable, but I think this one is actually a good example. Duran Duran and Liberty from 1990. This is one of my least favorite Duran Duran albums. Not the worst, because they have other in the future that are actually even more horrible, but this is one of the worst Duran Duran albums actually. From the band that they actually were, the great band that they were in the 80s, all of a sudden they decided to put on the guitars and become a whole lot rockier, and it didn't suit them one bit. The single Violence of Summer is dreadfully horrible actually. So I guess I keep it to get a complete collection for now anyway. But it's a change of direction in the career, and I don't think they would ever be quite the same, with the exception from the singles from the Wedding album. They would never be really quite the same as they were. A white label promo. I don't have all that much of those, but I picked this one. This is Swedish group Secret Service. Some of you might remember their song, Oh Susie, we run out of time. Oh Susie, that was quite a big hit actually in all over the world back in 1979-80. This is a later one from 1984, a single called How I Want You. Swedish pop disco, little new wave style from the 80s, and I don't know how I got hold of this. I think I bought and I got a whole bunch of 12 inches. And as you do know, I don't collect 12 inches, but I of course kept this one because it was quite a rare. A compilation album, a genre that I have been starting to cut down on for space reasons. But of course there are some that I need to have, and this one, it has been always one of my favorite compilation albums. It was also a very early album that I bought back in 93, 94 maybe. And it is Rock 85 English Style. It's a compilation with different new wave bands from the 80s. China Crisis, The Explorers, Icicle Works, Stephen Tin Duffy, Fiction Factory, Sideway Look, The Promise, Dark City, 21 Strangers, Fruit of Passions, Fruits of Passion, Cook the Book, and hit lists. And it is. I got hold of it at a time when I just like now enjoyed new wave synth pop very very much and wanted to discover some more of it. And this one came as a savior actually, because at the time in the 90s there wasn't that much of that genre played in the radio. So this one is I really like this compilation. And we have an album that tells a story. Well, most of my albums does in one way or the other, whether it is just memories from when I went in and bought it and remember the weather, or if it has a real specific story. I think I've told this before, but why not? Petroboy's Very, the amazing album, one of the best albums ever, with the odd cover sleeve that looks like Lego. When it came out in 1993, that was very high on my wish list for Christmas. I didn't get it. But at the time I was working as a cleaner at a hotel and temporary worker. And as I was waiting for the bus, I snuck into the record store that we had for new records back then, Skivbutiken. And I saw there what it actually was saying. So this album and a price tag, or what I thought was a price tag, 117. And back then this album had only been out for a couple of months, maybe half a year. So 117 Swedish kronor for this album, which is around maybe $11, $12. That was actually kind of cheap for a new record. So I was going to buy that one. Went to the disc, pulled it out and went to the disc and said, "I want this one." And they were actually going to take the normal price, almost $18 for this one, the full price. And I said, "No, it says 115." Well, that was the registration number of the record, so they could find the record behind the desk. Why didn't you say that? So I was pretty angry because I felt like I definitely lost the chance of buying this for a very low price. Day after that, I went into another place where they sold records at a lunch called Expert. That was an electronics store where they also sold records. And I went to check, and there it said this. 99, which is around $9-10, and it says kr, as in kronor. So I, for safety, checked, is this 99 kronor? Yes, it is. Bought it, and I realized in only 12 hours I have saved around $2 in one album. Someone wanted me to have this for a real nice price, so someone actually made me whole buying it for the more expensive price, and wait until I found this one the day after. So I was very happy for this one. An album that needs a vinyl pressing. I don't buy new vinyl pressings all that much. If I have an album, I have it. If it's an original pressing, or if I found it in a thrift store or something like that, that doesn't matter. If I have an album, I have it. So I don't need new pressings. But it's interesting though how many of the 90s stuff, especially from the 90s dance genre, aren't released on a vinyl. So even though I may not buy it if I see it, because I already have it on CD, it would be fun to see a release, vinyl release of one of my favorite bands from the 90s dance era, U96 from Germany. Euro techno in its best moment. I don't think that these ones are released on vinyl, and it would actually be fun to see these being released on vinyl one day. A common album and an uncommon album. A common album for me, who sees them almost every time I walk into a thrift store. But there are some common thrift store albums that are very underrated, that actually are really good. And one of them is this one. This is the British group Martin Best Concert. Martin Best is a British guy, I think, who lived in Sweden for many years, and he fell in love with the Swedish balladeer tradition, singer-songwriters from the past, and he decided to make an album where he, on traditional instruments from then, played and sang songs by Swedish poet Carl Michael Bellman, who lived somewhere down the 19th century. And for us here in Sweden, they are classics that many have made, and that almost is tradition to sing sometimes in school time. But I never heard them in English, so it was very, very great to hear songs like Ulla min Ulla as Ulla my Ulla, and så lunkar vi så småningom, in English, away we trot. And hear them singing in like they used to in Swedish versions, but in another language. So it's really great to hear British musicians play the Swedish balladeer tradition. I really like this album. And it is very, very common in thrift stores, in dollar bins. And I'm not sure if anybody but me have bought this one. An uncommon album, a little more problem for me, who buys most of my stuff in thrift stores, to find an uncommon album that I bought. But I picked this one. I ordered it from the same place as I bought the Petroboy album, Expert. And I didn't have it in Sweden. I have never ever seen it in Sweden. I don't see anything wrong with that, strange by that, because it is a thing that have never been popular in Sweden. Talking about my fascination for professional wrestling. But when I heard that WWE, then known WWF, World Wrestling Federation, had released an album with the superstars performing themselves, I felt like I gotta have that one. So I special ordered from Japan, even though it doesn't say with Japanese letters or anything. It was ordered from Japan. It costed me around $21, but it was worth it. I'm not saying that this WrestleMania, the album, is great. It is not good. But for me as a wrestling fan, it's so fun to have it, because it is definitely not something you see every day in Sweden, and it's also a little bit cult over it, cult status, because they are really more funny than good, actually. But definitely an uncommon album. An EP, well, I have many in the jazz genre, so I picked from the jazz genre, and it would be fun to include that one in this tag also. This one is very special. I found it in Stockholm in one of my first solo trips there, back in 2006 maybe. This is big band leader and musician Vanibergen, who lived in a very troubled life. He died way too early in the 1940s, of alcoholism, and these are his last recordings before his death. Skylark, My Little Cousin, Tesorum, Somebody Else Is Taking My Place. But I checked it out actually. It really is his final recording, so it's the truth also, released by Royale. But really fun thing to have actually. It's really great. A girl group, staying with jazz, because I felt like everyone would pick out those Runaways or Bangles or like that, the Go-Go's, Bananarama. I thought I would go to one of the earliest girl group, because it wasn't all that common in the big band era in the 30s and 40s, an all-female band. Females were back then more or less just vocalists, or if you maybe like Mary Lou Williams, you play the piano. But as a band leader, you had Ina Ray Hutton, of course. But what about this? Ivy Benson and her all-girls band, a band with only women playing, and in my opinion, that is a girl band. Even though they don't play the rock music, but it is really great, no doubt about it. So Ivy Benson and her all-girls band. An album cover that you love. I think it's a question I've gotten many times, and I've shown many different kind of albums. I'm trying not to show the same. But this is a cool album cover, no doubt. Rupert Hine, Waving Not Drowning, from 1982. Rupert Hine, for those who don't know, plays 80s electronic music, real great one. We have an album that I have listened to the most, also a common question. I picked this one. This is a little shadow on the cover, but still a great album. This is a Swedish release of Benny Goodman when he played in Stockholm back in 1950. They played this on Swedish radio back then. This concert, and when I in the beginning of the 90s found the entire CD with the same concert, I was very happy, because I remembered back then when in the 80s when they played on Swedish radio, that when there I wasn't new in jazz, listening to jazz. I was totally new in love with jazz. I was so fascinated by this concert. I still think it is maybe the best live album that I have with Benny Goodman. And I listened to it numerous times. Jazz Years, Benny Goodman. The last, we have an album that you had to get an OG copy of. And as I said, I don't care if it's an OG copy or if it's a reissue or something. If I have it, I have it. So I haven't been running my feet off to get an OG copy of something that I already have. The last album you purchased, that was yesterday, and I bought I think 3 albums, and all 3 of them will of course be included in my next vinyl CD update that I hope will be pretty soon. But to pick one and give a quick peek, to pick one for this tag that I bought then, because that was definitely the last album I purchased yesterday. I bought this one, Rolls Royce, and the album Rainbow Connection 4. Rolls Royce 4 from 1979. Whitfield Records, Norman Whitfield's own label, is released now. So it'll be a great one. Hopefully, I haven't listened to it yet, but I trust it's a great one. An album that they don't get, which I think means a very underrated album. And there are also a lot of them. Welcome to my music world. A lot of albums that are very underrated and that never got the appreciation that I think they deserved. But to pick one, I picked this one. David Bowie's Never Let Me Down from 1987. It's said that David Bowie's, many say that David Bowie's career in the 80s were more or less just Let's Dance album. I don't necessarily agree with that. Now I'm not going to say that Blue Jean and those songs were his absolute best, but it was good. But when I heard this one, Never Let Me Down, I was fascinated of how really great it was. Not the best album he has made. It doesn't reach the same level as of course, Ziggy Stardust or something like that, but it was really a great album. A whole lot better than everybody else said. And I've heard nothing but bad things about this album, but I think this one is definitely underrated. Really great one. A punk album, or a closest thing you have to it. You're asking the wrong guy. I have no interest in punk music whatsoever, and I have a hard time with this. But I picked the closest that I have. It's not an album, but it's a 7-inch single. I hope that is okay. This is the Stranglers, and it sounds actually punk, and I have it because of that is in my collection of stuff that are so funny that it actually is almost hilariously bad. Stranglers, and the singer that actually lived in Sweden, he studied in Sweden. He had problem at a bar, he was kicked out, and he wrote home and wrote this. Sverige jagar insnöad på östfronten. The Swedish version of Sweden all quiet on the eastern front. And I'm born Swedish. I speaking fluent Swedish, of course. I have hard time understand what he sings because it sings in the most horrible Swedish I ever heard. But it is in a punk style, and it is actually the closest thing that I have actually. And finally, favorite 2020 reissue, and I haven't bought any, as I don't care that much for new reissue. As I said, if I have it, I have it. I don't need a new version of it. So, that was the vinyl tag 2021. Sorry if it became a little bit long, but those tags tend to go a bit longer. So now I have, as I said, I'm going to do a new vinyl CD update pretty soon. And I have a response to make to Steve Carlson about VC channel and making videos. So you won't get rid of me that easily. So until next time, take care everybody, and so long.